Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatantam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinapando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So I thought I'd give a little talk because I felt inspired to talk about the spiritual world, and I was thinking the title of this lecture would be perhaps, because I can't say I don't know, but perhaps you don't know the illimitable splendor and sublime moods and places and everything about the spiritual world being so intensely and exquisitely sublime. Why? Because we've never seen it. We have never seen Radha or Krishna. We've never perceived anything of that Cintamani Dham spiritual world. So it requires Shraddha or faith to begin with in the beginning. And the process is outlined as Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedanam. These 9 limbs of bhakti, of devotion. Although bhakti doesn't translate synonymously with devotion, it's got something more. But there's 9 limbs, and the first 3 are perhaps considered sometimes more important than the others, although all 9 are considered important. And but I'm going to talk about the first 3. The rest are perhaps for a different time. So Shravanam means hearing, Kirtanam means chanting, and Smaranam means remembering. And when you talk about Smaranam, you generally say Leela Smaranam, is remembering the Leela, the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is often mentioned to be more important. It's always this process of perfect, more perfect, and most perfect, and then still more perfect, and it always goes on. So Shravanam is very important, the hearing. Some might say that's the most important, that you must hear first, because we can't see directly. So in the first instance, we hear of the glories and the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and then we chant those glories, and that process of hearing and then chanting. When we chant, we also hear. When we hear, we're generally silent, and we hear what the other person is giving to us. And if we chant, but when we chant, we hear our own chanting, so it reaffirms, it makes concrete what we've heard. It goes deeper. And what to speak of the benefit if you're chanting out loud to other people in the vicinity, or at a distance, because Krishna connects everything together. And then comes the Lila Smarana. Once you've done the hearing and the chanting, and you've got the pastimes manifesting in your heart and mind, then you have to remember, it's no good hearing them once and then not recalling them. Knowledge has to be recalled to the conscious brain, the consciousness, before it has any use. If it stays in the hard drive, it's useful that you can access it in the future, but it's not really as useful as if you are live with it. So how does one become so fortunate to hear these pastimes? And for those unfortunate conditioned souls in avidya, in ignorance, then they really don't know that, and not only do they not know, they don't know that they don't know. And it's ultimately grace, pushti. It's the grace of the Lord. Guru kripahi kevalam. Guru is always available when we are ready to perceive and live up to the high standards, the high expectations that Sri Guru expects of us. But if we clean our heart by chanting the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, then slowly we'll gradually become more eligible to approach Guru. And this we're still trying to do. It's an ongoing process, and we shouldn't rush or feel any anxiety over not being where we want to be, because that won't help. The only thing to do is the task at hand, to continue onwards daily, hearing and chanting, and then while we're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we remember the Leela. Someone asked, because this is confused in ISKCON sometimes, how people say, no, we should just be calling in the vocative sense, which is true as well, calling out for mercy, save me. But if we want to enter into the upper realms of bhava and prema, and then we need, especially to start with, to develop a sakti as well, we need to become positively attached to Krishna's Leela. It's better than detachment or renunciation from the word, is positive affirmation of the Cintamani Dham, Sri Dham, Golok, Vrindavan, or Braja Gokul in the Madhurya side of things, the Madhurya Dham, Sri Dham, Vrindavan, which is considered to be the zenith. Aishwarya is really quite insignificant compared to the Madhurya. So we can read the Krishna book, we can study the scriptures, we can read the Leela Shastras if we have. And what's the qualification for that? So many people say, oh, I'm not qualified to read Govinda Lilamrita or Radharas Sudhinidhi or some of these other incredibly poetic and beautiful works by our great acharyas. But the only real qualification is lobha, greed, sacred greed. This is what Srila Anantadas Pandit Babaji says often about. He translates this lobha as sacred greed. So that comes some time in the future to have that much sacred greed to read the Shastra all the day, every day, and go very deeply into them. But that's the basic, putting it in very simple language, the basic qualification is the greed to follow in the footsteps of the Ragatmika Braj Janas, the Nitya Parishads, there's different classifications of Raganuga Bhakti, which I'm not too hot on remembering. There's the precise difference between Ragatmika and Raganuga and Rupanuga. Generally, Ragatmika is reserved for, please forgive me if I'm wrong, but Ragatmika is reserved for the denizens of the spiritual Dham in Golok, and then Raganuga is, well, let's start with Rupanuga, is following in the footsteps of Rupa Manjari, Rupa Goswami, and that's generally, I suppose, my just to speak personally for a moment, that's generally what my position. I don't understand all the ins and outs of Raganuga Bhakti. I'm very much a beginner, but to pray to Rupa Manjari and follow in the wake of the prem of the Acharyas of Vrindavan, of Vraj, Varshana, and Radhakund is very much the desire. But the Raganuga is generally considered with feeling. It's when you although it can be started at any time, and it relates to the main point of this lecture, which is perhaps you don't know the spiritual world, how glorious it is, just how sweet and how satisfying and how perfect it is. I mean, it's been a idea of humanity throughout the ages, this idea of paradise. People doubt whether it exists because everything on this earth is relative, it's imperfect. There's no absolute truth in this material world. It's all relative. Only in the spiritual sky is the absolute truth. But seeing a reflection of a tree on the lake, you try and touch the tree and it's just not there. But that doesn't mean there isn't a real tree standing on the bank of the lake being reflected in the water. So likewise, that's a good analogy for how the relationship between the spiritual world and the material world exists. And the material world is, well, I don't really want to talk about the Advaita philosophy of exactly how the material world functions, but the focus, positive affirmation, positive attachment as opposed to detachment, positive attachment to the Cintamani Dham, the spiritual world. Cintamani prakara sadmasu kalpavriksha laksha viteshu surabhya abhipalayantam Lakshmi sahasrasata sambrama sevyamanam govindamadi purisham tamaham bhajami. That in the spiritual world there are the Supreme Lord, the Adi Purusham, the original person, the oldest person, the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, is served by millions of gopis or Lakshmis and surrounded by many thousands, hundreds of thousands of Surabhi cows. And so that's from Brahma Samhita, the 5th chapter, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu unearthed in the south of India, in Travancore, and then got translated and commented on by Jiva Goswami and later others. And so this is one way of hearing and chanting and remembering the spiritual world. It's not so much Leela Shastra. It is a Leela Shastra, but it's not like in a story format so much. It just gives, the Brahma Samhita gives a picture of the spiritual world, because the spiritual world is absolute, so we can focus, we can zoom in on the fine details, or we can zoom out and just stand back and admire, just realize, wow, everything we've known is only a quarter of the full whole of what is the holistic extent of Krishna's being. So we can read the Brahma Samhita, we can read, and actually even in the Bhagavad Gita we'll get this gyan, this knowledge of the spiritual world. Slowly realization will develop of what is real, and the avidya will fall away, and when the avidya falls away, the proverbial snake what'll happen to it? Nothing. This is the real rope and the snake. You walk down in the semi-dark and you see a snake, and then it turns out to be a rope. So what happened to the snake? There never was a snake. Nothing happens to it because it never was. That's the kind of general realization of the avidya, of what avidya is. The fact that avidya doesn't actually have a solid existence. It's the absence. It's only the absence of Shuddha Vidya, which is pure knowledge. So I will end here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Please read the Leela Shastras. Please chant. Please try and approach a spiritual master and take shelter of him, and we will all eventually make progress back to the Cintamani Dham, Sri Vrindavan, Krishna's and Radha's and all the gopis and gopas playground. Hare Krishna.